Hi guys. Okay, for some reason it looks a little bit dark on the screen, but here we are. I think we are live. Right. Things look a little bit weird on there. Anyway, it's time for a little Brexit prediction update. So I'm going to do a little analysis of what's going on right now, how that fits into my prediction. So yesterday, Boris came out onto the steps of number 10 to speak at the podium. People were wondering, the media were all speculating, is he going to announce a general election? So he didn't really say a lot about anything, but at the same time, or just before he was speaking, the Cooper, Letwin kind of gawks and various remainers in the Parliament were preparing and submitting a bill which is going to be discussed today, and they're going to try and put it through. What this bill aims to do is to push the deadline from October the 31st to January the 31st, so to force Boris not to go for a no deal. So I've been thinking, from what the chart looks like, that it is kind of unlikely that we would leave on October the 31st, despite Boris standing there and giving us his assurances and saying that we're going to leave come hell or high water. Not sure how you can quite say that with such certainty, but it is a good strategy to act confident and to act like you're just going for it. But will he be able to achieve it? Because what I see from the chart is his position is strengthened on that date rather than weakened. And why I see is this. Will he go for a general election? Now, Boris can't call a general election alone because of the Fixed Term Parliament Act. 2/3 of the House of Parliament have to vote for a general election. Now, the thing is, the Remainers want to push for a second referendum. They're not really that keen to go for a new general election. They're just scared. It's so unpredictable. It might strengthen, and I believe it would strengthen, the Brexiters' hand and Boris's hand, and they don't want to risk that. And they think if they get a general election, a change of the mixed-in parliament, then everything's over, especially if Boris continues with his threat to deselect all these Remoaner MPs, like the Gawks and the Hammonds and the Letwins and all those and the Justine Greenings. If he did that, massively, especially if he forms an alliance with the Brexit Party, that really strengthens Boris. They're scared of that. They know that a second referendum is their best route to stop Brexit altogether. Because let's be honest, the Tory Remoaners, they're not trying to make sure that we get a deal. They're trying to make sure that we stay. So they know that if they do stop Boris's ability to do no deal, which of course is a strong bargaining chip. We all know there's absolutely no incentive at all for the EU to negotiate if you don't have that threat of a no deal. With a no deal, plunges them into recession, very scary for them. They will want to come up with something. But we know that they won't, while they can be sure that they have allies in our parliament who are just going to keep scuppering the process and pushing it further and further down the line. So if they do succeed with this bill, there's absolutely no chance of a deal being put through at all, because the EU will have no will to negotiate. What I'm wondering, though, however, is if Boris is forced to push forward the date and to ask the EU for an extension, maybe he'll say to the EU that I'm only getting an extension on the proviso that we hold a general election, because in that way he arm twists Parliament into having the general election. And then we get what I said, the general election in January, before the deadline for coming out, and that strengthens his hand. So maybe that's why Boris looks strong on the 31st, because even if he is forced to push the deadline to the January the 31st, maybe he can engineer a general election, which is much better because he can go into that, win it, and then take us out, like I say, sometime in April. So that is the possibility. So today I think that the Remainers will probably have quite a lot of success in pushing their bills through in order to push the deadline further away. It remains, Dominic Cummings is saying, well, they don't even have to listen to that, but chances are they probably would. But we'll have to see. It's all very, very exciting. Both sides are being very tactical, but both sides, well, definitely the Labour is now only 25% in the polls. Tories are 35%. It's far more in Boris's favour to call an election now and to get MPs to vote for it. But why would Labour vote for it? Tony Blair was absolutely freaking out on air, saying, no, there's no way Labour should go for a referendum, for a general election. They must rather push for the second referendum, because Tony Blair understands that Corbyn is weakened right now and Labour could be wiped out. And like I say, I think in the next election, Labour are going to suffer at the hands of the Lib Dems, who are going to become an awful lot stronger. So Labour really don't want to risk that. Plus, the biggest problem, I'm going to come and talk about the prorogation as well, but the biggest problem Remainers have actually is Jeremy Corbyn. If Labour had a leader like an Yvette Cooper or Tom Watson, it would be so easy for all the Remainers to coalesce behind them. We're actually very fortunate as Brexiteers that we have Jeremy Corbyn there, because Jo Swinson, who, as I said in one of my videos, she's more like a closet Tory Remainer than a Lib Dem. She would not want Jeremy Corbyn anywhere near power. And therefore, they don't really want to get behind Labour when they call a vote of no confidence, do they? They want rather a Ken Clarke to be leading things, not Jeremy Corbyn. So he's kind of a thorn in the Remoaners' side. Also, I think Jeremy Corbyn is only in his front bench and the kind of John McDonalds that are loyal to Jeremy Corbyn. All they care about is power. I don't think they care about Brexit. They care about Brexit as a tool to get them in power. And if a no deal would help them, they'd be happy with a no deal. If staying in would help them, they'd be happy with that. They're just using Brexit as a political bit of leverage to get themselves into power. And I think the other political parties realise that, and they don't want to hand it to Jeremy Corbyn on a plate. So I think at the moment we won't get a general election soon. It's going to be either November or January. I thought it was more likely January than November. Although the date, September the 19th and 20th, we should watch that date, see what happens. So the whole thing about the prorogation, it's a big hoo-ha. They're only losing 5 to 6 days because at this time of the year, the Parliament goes into recess anyway, so they can all disappear and do their pointless party conferences, which is just a little bit of a snooze fest, really. So if the Lib Dems and Labour were that serious about stopping no deal, they should have cancelled their conferences so they could have had more time to sit in Parliament. But I know no one did that. Therefore, they're just using this prorogation and making a big song and dance about it. Meanwhile, there's plenty of time, as can be seen. They had this bill ready yesterday. They're going to debate it today. John Bercow will help them to take control of the agenda, the Remoaners, and they'll get this bill through anyway. So all this fuss about prorogation is a big hoo-ha about nothing. But, the Remoaners love to get outraged, especially Nicola Sturgeon. If someone said to Nicola Sturgeon that half the people are below the average income, then she'd get absolutely irate and say, we need revolution immediately. Because really being irate is just her claim to fame. It's the only way she gets attention. And it's the only way she can also divert from, the fact that she isn't doing very well and her policies stink. Don't you like this kind of Remainer or Ramona meme that says that no one voted for a no deal? Well, I'm afraid that implicit in voting leave was the willingness to accept a no deal. For a start, voting leave, we were told by David Cameron and George Osborne, would mean leaving the single market and the customs union, and a no deal achieves that. We were also told explicitly by David Cameron that once Article 50 was triggered, we had 2 years to negotiate a deal. If we didn't negotiate a deal in that time, we would leave with no deal. So implicit in voting leave was an acceptance that no deal was a possibility, not necessarily what we would want to happen, but it was definitely a possibility. Yes, we are comfortable with that. And I'm tired of these mind-reading Remainers and journalists who seem to know exactly why we voted. Whenever I've listened to the radio, I find that the leavers can articulate very well the reasons, and they have very valid logical reasons why they voted leave. In fact, I would like to know why Remainers voted Remain, because I think that there are very few Remainers that I hear. Yes, there are some that have valid reasons because they trade a lot with Europe and they are concerned. But there are a lot of Remainers who are just interested in ease of travel and their children being able to study at university or about their holiday home in France. That's what they seem to be concerned about. And I'd also, you guys who are Brexiteers out there, if you're ever in an argument with a Remainer, ask them how many European languages they speak. And I can guarantee you 70 to 80% of the time, they're going to say no, none. They only speak English. And then I would ask them, if you're so enthusiastic about the European project and you think it's so great that we are amalgamating and working with those cultures and countries, why have you not bothered to master a European language? The fact that you only speak English seems to mean that you're a little Englander with a very closed-minded mentality and you really don't have that much interest in other cultures or customs. So, there you go. My other favorite one is that no one voted for Boris Johnson. Well, we don't have a presidential system here. When we go to the polls, there's no Theresa May or Gordon Brown, Tony Blair, David Cameron, Nick Clegg. Their names aren't on the ballot paper. It says, are you voting for the Conservative Party? Are you voting for the Labour, whatever? And it's got the name of your MP. So you vote for a party, and whoever is currently leading that party, which will be decided by the party members, is the Prime Minister. That's just how it works. If people don't like it, it's not unconstitutional. It's just the way it works. And Boris is only trying to deliver on a vote that was held 2 years ago. Someone was saying that Trump is almost 75% through his term, and we still haven't left. Hi, David Rees. Will the SNP lose MPs now that Ruth Davidson has resigned? Yeah, it's a good question. I'll have to give that one some thought. When Brexit happens, do you see the UK getting a no-deal Brexit, or will the UK be tied to the EU? I hope it's a hard Brexit. Yes, I will have a look at Ruth Davidson's chart, see what made her jump. They always say it's family matters, don't they? So I think it's very much something else. She's a Remainer, and she's scared of getting a drubbing in Scotland because of Boris's policy. But, you know, they always talk about how strongly Scotland is Remain, but 40% of Scots are Leave, and there must be some regions where that Leave vote is a lot stronger. So you just don't know. And obviously people up there are living under the SNP. So you don't know. Maybe if they're suffering in other ways under the SNP, that may make them vote more Lib Dem or even Green. So SNP might shed votes to Lib Dem or Green. I do think the SNP are waning, but I will have to give you a more of a positive on that one, because I haven't really looked into it. Guys, I've always said it would be on the hard side of Brexit. I do think we're going to get a decent Brexit. And that is all because the whole momentum at the moment is towards nationalism, populism. I know they like to demonize those two words, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with either of them. People are feeling a upwelling of self-determination. They're turning away from globalism, away from neoliberalism. They realize that these big blocks and all this free trade is not what it's cracked up to be, which I am going to talk about in another video. They realize globalization in the EU is all about making the rich richer and impoverishing people and wiping out the middle class, making it much harder for small business, favoring the biggest business with the powerful lobbyists, with the powerful tax lawyers. It's all about regulation to facilitate big business. People are seeing through it now. They're seeing through it all over Europe. If you look at Germany, they had regional elections in Saxony and Brandenburg. The AfD, they were a tiny party. They were nowhere 4 years ago. They got between 28, I think, and 25% in those two states in Germany, East Germany, former East Germany, those are in. And they are now the second party in those two states from nowhere. This means that Merkel's party was relegated down to 15% in one of them. And and the centre-left party lost a lot of votes as well. So what you see is, in all countries, the Swedish Democrats are doing well. Obviously, in Italy, if they do go to the polls, it's highly likely that Matteo Salvini can get an outright win for Lega Nord and become their prime minister. You've got Orban. In Poland, there's an upswing to the right. Everywhere, people are turning against the EU, and the Remainers are kicking and screaming in absolute denial. They realize they're on the ropes, and they're in total denial. That's why they are panicking. What we see now is a blind panic. And even if, in their minds, they think they're going to take us back into the EU's changed. It's never going to be the same. Sure, if we come out, they go bang into recession. Big problems, big structural problems. There's huge problems in their economy, and their trade deal with Japan is not going to help their manufacturing either in Germany. So Remainers are clinging to the past. They always say we're living in the past. I'm afraid that if the EU's been going since the Treaty of Rome, it dates back to the 50s. We joined in 73. The EU is about as current as the Carpenters. For goodness sake, it's not new, it's old. We are the forward-looking ones that can see the world politics is changing and people are rejecting this whole neoliberal thing. Remainers, you're not ahead of the curve, guys. You're clinging to something of the past that's actually dying. And sorry, we don't want to be chained to the dead carcass of Europe. Thanks. I think Remainers are some of the most ideologically short-sighted people because they want to buy into something that is anti-democratic, it's not accountable, and it's coming increasingly authoritarian. Mix authoritarian with military, and they have big ambitions in terms of military. And what do you have? You have something akin to fascism, which I'll come to in a little bit. Okay. Someone was saying to me on, I think, Magical Neptune, and I've heard this comment mentioned in the media, and they say, okay, Brexiteers, are you happy now you've got democracy? You wanted democracy returned to the sovereign parliament, and now you've got kind of Boris Johnson proroguing parliament and subverting the will of parliament. Well, to be honest, when I wanted Brexit, I never saw it as a one-stage process. The first stage was to leave the EU, but the second stage was to reform our political system. We need to reform the House of Lords, and we need to get rid of all the globalists and all the EU kind of, let's call them traitors, in our parliament. Because over the last 40 years, the only kind of person who advanced in politics was people who were very keen on the EU. They were pushed forward, they were promoted within the parties. They totally took over the Labour Party, which under Tony Benn was used to be the Brexit Party, really. So they took over Labour, they've infiltrated the Tories. Of course, they control the Lib Dems. So it's not enough to bring back power to our parliament, because our parliament are full of neoliberal globalists who do not have the interests of this country at heart. So the second stage would be to have a general election, weed those people out, and get a parliament that, instead of wanting to take control so they can give it right back to the EU, want to take control in order to do good things for this country. So no, I want Parliament to take back control, but not really the Parliament we have at the moment. So it's a two-part process for me. So it's not quite finished by leaving the EU. There's still loads of work to be done, including getting rid of the organisation Common Purpose, pulling the plug of the funding they get as a so-called charity, which is totally disingenuous, and moving on. Just to address, I got some comments here. Yeah, the Brexit chart of March 29 had Mars on the descendant. I really thought we'd battle it out and leave. Seems like we're trying to leave an abusive partner. Yeah, well, see, Mars... Saturn and Pluto are still very much active in the chart, and so is Jupiter. It was never going to be easy. It is very, very hard to leave. I think we're doing well. We made major strides forward getting rid of Theresa May and getting Boris. Even March 29, it was crossing the Rubicon, because it was what helped us to eventually get rid of Theresa May. It what galvanized Nigel Farage to get going with the Brexit Party, so that we had such a good result in the EU elections, because that's what scared up the Tories, right? It encouraged them to vote Boris. So it's all part of a process. Do you think Macron is the sticking point on the EU changing its direction? It's become compulsory since yesterday for all French schools to fly the EU flag. Well, Macron is a massive globalist. He is such a supercilious, smooth, fake, know-it-all. I don't know how anyone has any time for him at all. Yes, Macron is the driving force at the moment, because Merkel is incredibly weakened. As you can see, her party is declining. Every time there's a vote, she gets a kicking. So she's a dead person walking, dead woman walking, or whatever. Macron is the driving force behind this project at the moment. But I think he's in denial, because everyone else is just had enough of it. By the way, you know, they're always talking about Brexiteers. I don't know, they say it about Trump supporters as well. Uneducated. Well, I ask you, is Gary Lineker educated? He's a footballer. And all these blue ticks on Twitter who are artists, singers, pop stars, or showbiz people, I very much doubt any of them are educated, because the nature of showbiz is people go into it very young and very early, and they have very little education. So all these people talking about a lack of education, well, why did they show us how well they did at their A-levels and what qualifications they have? Okay. There'll be no Venus arising. That's quite right. The whole aim of the EU is to quash nationalism. That's why they're so keen on mass immigration, because they want to bring people in from all over the world who have no affinity to the cultural identity of a country, no allegiance to the flag. I heard someone say that, you know, it's communism. Again, it's part of communism to get rid of national identity. So, and at the heart of it, there is a communist ethos going on in the EU. Apparently, they thought, the communists, that patriotism and nationalism was dead prior to World War II, and they were shocked at the way particularly the British and the Americans fought and came out to fight for their country. And there are still so many people who sign up to the army for Queen and for country, and who will die for their country. And that really disappointed them, that spirit, in World War II, because they thought they'd crushed it then. They still haven't crushed it now, so I don't think they are going to crush it, but they certainly are looking to. And yes, Macron, yeah, of course, mass immigration happening so quickly does dilute the culture. Over time, immigrants will assimilate and learn to enjoy and thrive and enjoy the culture. But if there's so many people coming at once, then it just is, they all form their enclaves. There's no desire to join the culture. But as I have said in previous vlogs, you'll always hear them saying, well, what is British culture? There's no such thing. Oh, rubbish. You could do a whole vlog on what it is, but they'll try and tell you it doesn't even exist. Right. just to say as well, ex-army Paz, another vlogger, was talking about the vicious and nasty tweeting that is going on. Apparently some half-wit, useless radio presenter, pseudo, aspiring to be somebody person on Twitter had tweeted a picture because, under no deal, they say we might not get the flu vaccine. So they said maybe we should have different queues. So the Brexiteers in one queue and the Remainers in one queue, and the Remainers get their flu vaccine and the Brexiteers don't. And he said, oh, well, kind of, it's win-win, trying to imply that if Brexiteers don't get the flu vaccine and die, it's great for them. Reminds me of what Polly Toynbee was saying about how Brexiteers are dying off. You have this absolute nastiness where people are actually beginning to celebrate the deaths of other people so that their political aims can take predominance and they think it's right. And, what do you say about that? It's just impossible. To say another thing, Nick Abbott on LBC, he used to be quite funny, and that was his thing, wasn't he? He came on a Friday and a Saturday night. He did 3 hours of kind of light-hearted political discussion that was quite funny. Since Brexit, he's done nothing but use those 6 hours he has on the weekend for unabated Trump bashing, Brexit bashing. He is able to put out his propaganda uninterrupted. There's never any balance on the show. There's never any experts brought in to balance out his opinion. He's no expert at all. He just is able to spout his propaganda nonstop, undiluted by any other form of opinion. And basically the callers that ring in are generally all over him or are not articulate enough to put him in his place, which I've called in radios a lot. And you can put your point of view across, but it's never as easy as a caller because they can turn your sound down and shut you up when they don't like what you're saying and speak over you. And they're very trained, these media people in radio presenters, at using tactics to try and jump in and ridicule you or pick on the smallest thing you say and not allow you to speak back, and not allow you to answer back. So it's very hard for the callers to challenge him. But as I say, that's something. To go back to the whole nastiness and how nasty it's got, there's another subscriber wrote to me and they said currently running on BBC is a 3-part series on the rise of Hitler and the rise of Nazism. And this subscriber said to me, I wonder when this program was scheduled, because they said they seem to have scheduled it exactly to match the going back of Parliament. And he said to him when he was watching it, he said they were trying to portray Boris like Hitler and to smear him in that way. And I think they've done that a lot. But the problem is all these labels are failing to resonate anymore. They've used it's like Hitler, it's like Nazism. They've used it so many times that people aren't even listening. They're not even bothering. It's really not having any impact anymore. But the other thing I wanted to say about the Remainers and the globalists, they use narcissism and the tactics of narcissists very, very well. I don't know if they do it deliberately or they just understand how narcissism works. What narcissists always do is if they are doing something wrong, they always project it. So say a narcissist is lying. They'll look at you and say, you're lying, you're a liar, I don't trust you. And what that does, it puts you on the back foot and you end up defending yourself and saying, no, I'm not. When you should really be asking, no, it's you that are the liar. So when the neoliberals, the globalists, the remaoners are always saying to us, you're the fascists, you're the far right, it's them that fit the true definition of fascism. It's the EU, if you scratch the surface just a little bit, that you will realize their roots were in the Nazi Party conference of 1943 when they were talking about how to win the peace. That manifesto of the Nazis in 1943 became the Treaty of Rome. Juncker, what does his second name tell you? Juncker, the Juncker bomber. We have a lot of people with Nazi roots in the EU. So they have to keep trying to tell us, we're the ones who are similar to Nazis or to fascists to cover up the fact that it's actually them. And if people step back and ignore all these slurs coming at us and analyze it, they'll realize, no, it's you guys. It's you guys who are the authoritarians who are trying to take control, who are working government controlling and working so closely with big business and undermining everything under it. Sorry, I just got to get rid of this irritating little message there. So that's that. I was listening to Brendan O'Neill podcast on Spiked. They said something rather interesting. They said in the past, Maggie crushed the miners. Maggie crushed the steelworkers when they striked, and when the miners were striking, the Yorkshire miners, the steelworkers, all those big, heavy industries, the strikers were crushed. The upper crust, the upper middle class have always had an ally in Downing Street, whether it was Maggie, Cameron, Blair. Brexit was the first time the upper middle class suffered a defeat. They now feel what it's like to be a miner, a coal miner, steel worker. They've never suffered a defeat before to their political aspirations and to their way of thinking. And that's why they absolutely can't stand it. And they're going crazy. Okay. People were suggesting that one of the or two of the EU countries might use their veto to stop us getting this extension, particularly Macron, or that Boris might talk to Orban about doing that. I think this whole veto thing is overrated because they use the veto like, what do they call it? Like with nuclear war, it's mutually assured destruction. So lots of countries have nuclear weapons, but they never use them. That's exactly how the veto works. No country ever uses their veto because they're scared of it being used in another scenario against them. So they will hold back on it. I really doubt any country will use the veto. It's really a turkey voting for Christmas, and it'll cost them a lot financially. So I wouldn't be holding on my seat for that. Okay. And yeah, like I say, it's obvious the EU aren't going to give us a deal if no deal is taken off the table. That's our bargaining chip. I was listening to Ian Duncan Smith. He was on the Sky's Politics show on Sunday. He said that last year in October, before Theresa May signed that disastrous deal of hers, he went with another minister to visit Barnier, and they had a concrete proposal for the Northern Ireland border. And Barnier said, yeah, this is probably what will happen. But instead of using that, May totally ignored what Ian Duncan Smith had done with these other ministers, that comprehensive plan, and she went and signed in the backstop anyway, right? So this whole Northern Ireland thing is totally exaggerated. It needn't be a problem. Ian Duncan Smith has got something in the pipeline. Also interesting, Ian Duncan Smith mentioned he was preparing papers for some sort of legal challenge, and the Sky News journalist either didn't hear him or didn't want to ask, but she didn't go on to ask, oh, Ian, what exactly is that about? So I think Ian Duncan Smith might have something up his sleeve. This could be exciting. This could help. Okay. Yes, communism. Yes, communism. All the same. Yeah, all equal in misery. That's the green agenda. Venus, I'm going to do, if you're interested in this whole communism and all that, my next blog is very much about that. So keep an eye out for it. It's so refreshing to hear a reasonable voice here. Most astrologers that I know in Britain are ardent remainers. Yeah, I know. A lot of people sometimes, well, not a lot. I think most of my viewers quite appreciate that I'm speaking from the right side of things. That's why I'm going to call my channel, doing astrology right. But I don't like to hide from you my views. I have my views. As you know, I am on the Brexit here, the nationalist populist side, and I will tell you that when I make my predictions, however, I'm making them on what I see. I'm not making predictions that suit me. Obviously, if I was, I'd say we're definitely coming out on the 31st, which I'm not saying. So yeah, I'm not sure why so many astrologers buy into that, but I think the nature of astrology and sort of tarot and all those things, those people usually have a background of being very interested in, affirmations or thinking they're spiritual and all that. That's not my background. My background is in economics, law, and accounting. I have a very pragmatic, logical background, and therefore I don't, when I do astrology, it's, I'm looking at it in a very different way. I'm not looking at it with this very sort of idealistic mumbo jumbo slant. Marjorie Moore appears to indicate a new world capital will form in Europe between 2022 and 25, a golden triangle or something. It falls over the London, Brussels, and Paris. Yes, someone else was mentioning Marjorie Orr to me, but I think she's just projecting what she would like to think. What you're saying there does have some resonance, but I am thinking that around 2025, 2026, we are going to have a strong core of European countries that are absolutely committed to being United States of Europe. It won't include the UK. It might not even include some other countries like Italy or Hungary. It'll be core countries, Germany, France, Holland, Belgium, those sort of countries. And they are going to go toe-to-toe with Russia. That's how they're going to solidify their power, is in a military way. And I think they'll go up against Russia, but I'd like to talk more about that. Okay, do you think this will be a new global London, or will it be Brussels and Paris? Well, I think that London is going to hang on to its financial capital state. And I think it'll be strengthened by coming out, because I noticed that the financial people don't seem as worried. The kind of banking types don't seem as worried about Brexit anymore. And if we were going to stay in the EU, Frankfurt and Paris were always trying to take London's crown as the financial capital anyway. So even if we'd stayed in the EU, London's position as the world financial center wasn't assured. But I think now we're coming out, it will be. I will give that some more thought. IDS is your MP. Oh, really? Yes. So you're obviously in Enfield. He's somewhere around Enfield in Duncan Smith, isn't he? Epping Forest is the MP for there. Yeah, yeah. My MP is Oliver Dowden, who's kind of he's a minister without a portfolio at the moment. He's sort of Brexit-y, you know. I don't think he's the most ardent Brexiter. He'd probably like no deal, but he's hanging in there. He's not too bad, right? Could be worse. Okay, I just want to end this. I think I've said everything I want to say about Brexit. I just want to say my prediction for for an extension till the end of January. Well, I didn't say it was going to be an extension till the end of January specifically. I said that we wouldn't leave on October the 21st, and there would be a general election after which we would be able to leave because of the changing of the arithmetic. So what's happening today in Parliament will be very interesting to see if they get this bill through to stop us leaving on the 31st, because that'll make a general election more likely. It's going to be very interesting to see when the MPs are ready to vote for a general election, because I really think the rest of them are too nervous to go for it at the moment. Thank you, guys. Chingford. Yeah, that's it. Chingford. I had the general direction right. Thanks, guys, for your interaction. It was very interesting last night. Very interesting to see what's going to happen today. And I will see you soon.